Welcome to my next video. This time I wanted to show you how I paint the first piece in my small collaboration with the Japanese art tools maker Kuretake. The people from Kuretake were nice to send me some of their tools, also some of their new released tools, so I can get the feel of them, test them, just use them in my everyday work, but also make some pieces as an inspiration for you in this month's World Watercolor Month. So I'll be doing some paintings and sketches using these tools. If you want to know and see what I received, just go to my channel. There is a live stream in which I open and go through all the tools, do some color swatches, test mixes and so on. So if you are interested in these, go check it out. Okay, but before talking about the tools I chose for this piece, let's go through its topic, what I'm painting here. I really like to take my camera and just go for a walk to look for inspiration. This is how almost all of my illustration series started. The Bicycle Boy series, the Yokohama series, the Tokyo Storefront series, all of them started from something that I saw on one of my exploratory walks with a camera. So when I feel that I need this inspiration for some pieces that I have in mind, I go and look around. And this time also I took my camera and I went for the Tsukishima, which is a part of Tokyo near our house, to look for some old buildings and interesting places. And Tsukishima not only has these canals and ships and boats and jetties and so on, which make these interesting spaces, but it also has a residential area with these really narrow streets. How you would imagine a cramped old school Tokyo suburb to look like, but actually it's really hard to find these kind of streets, residential streets in Tokyo recently. So I go there to do photos of buildings that are not shops and the usual things that I photograph, but just residential buildings, old school Japanese residential buildings. But this time on my way there, I found this place with the sakura trees and the bridge. Of course, the sakura trees are not in bloom anymore, but I can recognize a cherry tree if I see it. And it had this awesome bridge, the canal, and some colorful buildings in the background. It was a neat scene on its own, but I wanted to make it even more interesting for this picture and to match it a bit better with the colors I wanted to use here. So I decided to replace the trees, the leaves on the trees with the sakura, so the cherry blossoms. I added a boat on the right side, one of these pleasure cruise things that you can see all over the canals and rivers in Tokyo called Yakatabune. You can rent these and have a meal on board or a party, so there is a lot of them here. I also wanted to change the design of the bridge a bit to make it more in the traditional Japanese architectural style. I have a book of interesting Japanese bridges that I use a lot for the inspiration for these changes. But I also left some of the original elements that I liked there. So for example, this strange Japanese style design building there that is, I don't know, a toilet, I think maybe, I don't know. I also left the lorry that was there on the bridge, but added some people and a red car, and also added some boats just moored to the side of the canal. To figure all these elements out, I first did a rough thumbnail just to check the basic things like perspective and the composition. I then did a more detailed sketch on the paper that I was going to use for the painting, which is the Venice sketchbook made by Fabriano. Erased this sketch lightly with a kneaded eraser and then redrew this sketch again a bit neater to have a solid base with all the details already in to draw the final lines with felt tip pens. Doing such a detailed sketch allows me to focus more than on the quality of the line, so when I use a tool like the felt tip pens that I'm not really used to, I prefer to do a very detailed final sketch. Here I use the felt tip pens that I also got from Kuretake in this package, which are the ZiG Mangaka felt tip pens. I use the 0.3, 0.5 and 0.8 thicknesses for making this picture, which is almost A4 in size, I'm guessing. At first I was thinking about making the buildings in the background appear far away by making them without any lines, but this picture turned out to be quite detailed, so I thought that maybe it's better to have the whole thing consistent. by doing the lines there also, but I was careful to choose the thinner 0.3 pen for the background and to put less detail there than in the foreground to still have this illusion of distance there. I used the thickest 0.8 pen only for the fence that is really close to us and for the branches of the sakura tree. When the lines were finished, I carefully erased the sketch and was ready to start the coloring. And here for the main event is the color set that I'll be using for this piece. This is a set of 6 colors ZiG clean color brush pens, and I'm told that this is a new product in the Kuretake line, which is this limited colors set inspired by the works of Claude Monet. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the name, but you know who I'm talking about. And in particular, the colors are based on the woman with parasol painting, which is this really atmospheric work full of delicate blues and greens and some yellows and reds there also. I don't think this set is a perfect representation of the colors from the original painting, but it's more reimagining of this painting, and we can see a version of it on the set's like cover on the packaging. But yeah, it's an interesting limited palette that I was kind of curious to use on a picture of my own. In this set you also get a water brush, so a medium size water brush that's empty. You can put water there to use it to dilute the colors from the brush pens, and some pieces of thick kind of watercolory paper that are empty and some that are already pre-printed with this woman with parasol template kind of picture. But instead of using this template and recreating the picture that's already on the cover of the product, I decided to paint something of my own, just use this as a limited palette. So an exercise similar to these that I usually do with my watercolor limited palettes, allowing me to experiment with color combinations that I would maybe not usually use when using my big watercolor sets. Overall, I used only some of the colors straight from the brush pens, for example the yellow, which is really pale color, not intensive enough to use it for mixing actually, but most of the painting here was done with the empty water brush that I used to mix colors on my ceramic palettes. So I would use the brush pens as kind of reservoirs for paint. I would paint them on the ceramic palette and then mix the colors together using the brush pen and paint with the resulting ink as I would with watercolors. The only thing is that these pens are not pigment based, they are dye based, water based inks. So the ink, when it's diluted with water, it behaves in strange ways a lot of the times. If you dilute a color that's pigment based like watercolors for example, the color just becomes more and more transparent, so it's more and more close to the color of the paper when you use it. Here also the color becomes transparent, but as it is often with inks based on dyes, the color changes to its kind of base thing, I guess. So for example, if you dilute the brown, it will become pink, and if you dilute the blue, it also becomes pinkish. So I guess the color kind of devolves into this base, and a lot of the colors from this set devolved to pinkish hues. And this is often seen with dye-based inks. For example, I had the same thing happen to me when I was painting with Kobe inks, so the fountain pen inks, which are also dye-based. Also, because of the dye character of these inks, these pens are marketed for quick sketching and rough sketching, like rough designs and so on, and not for making final pieces that are going to be displayed or sold, because these inks are not light fast. So that's one thing you have to be careful about when you are going to buy these. You should be okay when making sketches in a sketchbook or something and just keeping the results away from light, or making pieces that you scan right away and just use the data. But you have to remember that these are not as light fast as professional watercolors, for example. Overall, I had a lot of fun using these by mixing the colors on my ceramic palettes and also by using the pen straight on the paper. they worked really well on this not so textured but still good for water paper. This is 200 grams paper, hot pressed I think, because it doesn't have so much texture. The pens worked great on this paper, and this made me excited to use the bigger set that I also got from Kuretake, which has 48 colors. With that set, I'm tempted to use the pens without diluting them at all and without mixing them at all, like pre-mixing on the ceramic palettes, but using all the inks straight as they are from the pen. That's an interesting experiment that I'm really looking forward to do. Either way, using this limited set of only 6 colors of a medium that I'm completely new to was a refreshing thing for me to do, and forced me to try some new things, for example new color variations, which is always a good thing. Okay, this is how the picture turned out, and I think I managed to paint more or less what I wanted, even though the colors tend to skew towards pink because of the dilution thing I talked about. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. As always, feel free to comment, share and subscribe, and you can also support me on Patreon. It's your support there that allows me to spend time making these videos. I would also like to thank Kuretake for sending me all these awesome tools to try and feature in my just regular work. Okay, see you next time. Bye!